I'm sorry I went on for too long in the introduction, so I'll just have to make up for it. Well, days after the coup of 1st February, a protest started in Mandalay and it spread to all over the country. For a couple of weeks, it was almost a carnival atmosphere. Huge crowds came out onto the main intersections of Yangon and Mandalay and other towns, and people were singing, and marching with flags and banners, and there was even some bands playing and dancing. But very soon, the ugly side began. There was shooting. It began in Naypyidaw, and people were killed. Well, this only inflamed the people, and from peaceful protest, it turned to barricades, Oh, the people didn't use weapons or anything, but they stood firm against the police and the military, and they put up sandbags, barricades, and the army tried to remove them. And little by little, it became very violent. Well, 3-4 months is long time for this kind of thing to happen. Up to now, well, 900 or even closer to 1,000 people have been killed. Well, of course, some people from the police and the army have already been killed, and you could say that the hostilities have spread across the country, and I don't know how you would really define it, but a lot of people are saying that it's just civil war between the army and its own people. You could say that it's like an army of occupation, that the Myanmar armed forces are fighting their own people. So it's a very sad situation, and there's no likely way out of it at the moment. The commander has promised elections at an undefined period in the future, probably 2 years, but the people won't have it. What the people are demanding is that return to the situation of January, democratic government and all, and to respect the results of the elections. There are also calls for the release of prisoners, but I want you to know that these protests and this war are not because of Aung San Suu Kyi. We are not fighting for her and for return of her to power. Well, that may be part of it, but that's not the whole story. You've got to understand that. Well, the thing is that the whole country has been thrown into turmoil. We were doing quite well for about 10 years. There's 2 terms of office. The economy was doing well. Well, civil society was, let's say, strong. Universities were making up for those lost years, and we were expecting, the peace talks to bring an end to the earlier civil war between the ethnic armed groups and the central government. But all this has been, let's say, ditched. All this has been sabotaged, and we've suffered a huge setback. What this means for the economy, and our future, well, the whole world and the region is reeling under the impact of the pandemic. It has had an adverse effect on the economy, and on top of this, there was a coup. So, how much worse could things be for Myanmar and also for our neighbors? If the governments, the people in power, I mean the civilian governments as well as the military juntas ruling out, don't have that much sense and don't have that much regard for its own people, what more can we expect from them? Now we have a situation where ASEAN has been called on board to look into and to try to sort out this mess, But as you can see from the recent vote at the United Nations General Assembly, not the Assembly, the United Nations, ASEAN itself is divided. There are countries which favored the resolution and the countries who abstained. So Indonesia is taking the lead, and we really welcome that. But I don't think they're making any headway at the moment. So in the end, if you ask the question, where are we headed to? Well, I think it's going to be a very slow process. Although ASEAN talks about dialogue, I think dialogue is the most irrelevant and most overrated term at the moment, because neither side is going to think about engaging in dialogue. And at this point, I'll have to tell you that there is a national unity government formed on the borders of the country with the people who were elected in the elections in November, mainly from the NLD, and they form a kind of parallel government. There's also a committee representing the People's Parliament. And so we have two governments. I don't think the international community has openly come out for either government, although some powers tend to side with the military junta. I think as you can also see from the votes, that most of the world is on the side of democracy, and freedom, and the people who represent that, and against the junta. So I think the civil war, as they call it, will most probably go on. If you think about trying to bring an end to this, I get asked these questions at these kind of events very regularly. I can only think of the example or the analogy that happened in Cambodia. When the Cambodian civil war ended, the UN had to step in with a big program. It's called the United Nations Transitional Authority for Cambodia. It was very expensive, but at least it worked. And Cambodia had elections, but it was a very, stop and go kind of affair. And we know the kind of situation that's in Cambodia now. Something like that, since the two sides are at loggerheads with each other and not willing to speak, I think we'll have to find a third entity. There are no domestic voices of stature, so it will probably have to be international. How long that will take, we don't know. And that's the sad part of it. And that entity will have to try and attempt to bring the two sides together and find a resolution. Other than that, I don't see anything, that is comforting, and anywhere coming to a resolution. There are no other ways. So we'll have to be very patient. And during this time, there'll be a lot of deprivation, people fleeing their homes, not having jobs, not having even food. So I think it's a very sad situation, I repeat, but it's also, I shall try to end with a hopeful note. In times of crisis, people with commitment, with spirit, with courage have emerged. And there's been a kind of a cutoff point, that is in February. The politicians of the past, party leaders and student leaders of the past, well, their, let's say, performance has ended. And we are talking about new players, a new generation. The people who have come out really to the fore are the millennials, what we call Generation Z, and they are also fighting in the jungles, training to fight against the junta. And these are the people, who we will have to regard as assets for the future. and people we can rely on, because I repeat, the old modalities, the old people, the old generations, parties, policies have become defunct, and I include the military in it. So we have to think about entirely a new set of people, and mostly they are going to be young. My generation, like I like to say, has really failed. So it'll take time, and this is the price that people have to paying for their complacency and having put their hope in one person, that is Aung San Suu Kyi. There's a lot of lessons that the country itself has to learn, and a lot of lessons that neighboring countries and the rest of the world have to learn. So I'm hopeful. I've been a political prisoner, and I'm a born optimist, but it's a very, like I say, sad situation. People are dying, and we can only hope that with continued commitment and courage, we will be able to find a way out of this not too long in the future. Thank you.